Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we are going to explore animal communication, listening to animals. With me is my old friend Miranda Alcott, the person whom I first interviewed about 20 years ago. Miranda is a specialist in intuitive animal communication, and also she is involved in emergency rescue work. She has her master's degree in spiritual psychology. Welcome, Miranda.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for inviting us. And this is Rumi. Rumi is my hearing dog, and he's a service dog.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you both here.
Thank you. Okay, Rumi, down. Good boy.
You've been working in the area of animal communication for decades, as I mentioned.
That's accurate.
And with many different species.
Many, and I doubt that I would ever be able to even come close to 1/10 of the species on our planet.
Yeah. Oh, no, because there are millions.
Millions. Millions.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel so blessed to be able to do this work. I came into this life remembering more than most, so blessed. And I knew I was going to be teaching, but I wasn't sure how or what. And I had so much to learn when I got here. So, yeah.
And I think an important part of your development is the fact that your parents were active in the American Society for Psychical Research, which is sort of a precursor of parapsychology.
Yes, absolutely.
So even as a child, your parents encouraged you to some extent to be open to your own psychic functioning.
Yeah. They actually let me know the boundaries. They said it was nice, but keep it in the house. And we used to have friends that they would, as your parents go have dinner with friends. One friend of theirs, they were already involved with ASPR, and we were having dinner one night there, and of course I was the kid that had to go to bed early, so they put me to bed at their friend's house. And then on the way home, I was about 9 years old, and on the way home, I was sleepy in the back of the car, and I remember my parents were upset about something, which was unusual for them. So I woke up and peered over the front seat and said, "What's going on?" And my mother said, "Well, Juanita Walker, who was a wonderful psychic herself, Juanita just told your father and me that she had visited Jupiter." And I said, "Oh, well, that's not a big deal." My dad pulled the car over, and they both turned around and looked at me over the back seat. So that was the beginning of, oh my gosh, what is this child and what's really going on?
Well, I can well imagine that many decades ago, the idea that a human might mentally visit another planet seems quite far-fetched, but now we know that there have been experiments in which prior to various NASA missions, some talented psychics, people like Ingo Swann, went using remote viewing to describe what the space missions would find, and came back with interesting information, unexpected information that turned out to be accurate.
Which took years to prove, which I love that. That's because I do have this, I have a little bit of an attitude about science being behind the times, but.
Well, we're not going to go into all the details in this interview, I don't think, Miranda, but it's fair to say that in your own work as an animal communicator, you have also come up with lots of examples of unexpected information that was checked out later, often by a veterinarian performing surgery, turned out to be accurate.
In my animal medical intuitive work, it's true, this is developed, it's a work in progress, and it's developed over time. But it was not something I set out to do or that I was looking for.
Yeah.
It came to me while I was working with others. And I was stunned that this could actually happen. I didn't know that could happen. So it was very surprising to me. I had a client who called in the middle of the night, and she was scream crying because her animal was in the emergency veterinary hospital, and the vet had said, if your animal doesn't eat, she's going to die. So the woman had called me with a couple of friends on her phone, and my mother was interpreting for me. And she said, please tell my dog to eat or she's going to die. When I checked in with the animal right then, it was clear the animal was making her transition. So I told this woman that, and she said, well, does she want me to be with her? And I said, yes. I said, I don't know what this means, but I'm being shown white dots on the back of this dog's heart, like little bumps, and I don't know what that is. She went to the clinic right away. When she got there, the vet opened the door and said, oh, it's you again. And she said, well, this animal communicator told me my dog is dying. And he said, I was just back there. Your dog's alive. So they went back, and the dog, in fact, had transitioned. And the vet said, well, what else did this animal communicator say? She said, well, she said that she has white bumps on the back of her heart. And he said, well, I'll do a necropsy for free if you'll let me do that. So they did, and in fact, there were white bumps. To this day, I don't know what the white bumps are in the back of the heart, but it opened my eyes that why would I get that information? And I am very much of an understanding that divine guidance comes when you least expect it. So I thought, okay, this has been given to me for a reason. I don't know what it is yet, and that was over 20 years ago.
Well, let's talk about the process by which an average person, someone who doesn't necessarily have the benefit of your childhood gifts and a family background, if a person, one of our viewers, or someone like myself who doesn't interact with animals very much, if I want to open myself up, how would I start?
The best way to start is to ask yourself to be quiet inside. Sometimes you have to consciously say, let me get off the road so I'm out of the way of whatever might come through. People who meditate seem to come by this fairly naturally because they're leaving themselves open in receptivity. So what I share with people is be quiet as you can, clear your mind screen, close your eyes, and envision that your animal is coming to talk to you. And when we say talk, I don't mean literally you see a cat's mouth speaking English. It's a sense of what they're communicating. You allow yourself to realize you're dealing with a different culture. What does this culture have to share with you? You may not know the language. That's not the point. The point is to remain open in receptivity. And then the second step is to trust. It's what I call the T muscle. You know, you need to be able to trust that what you got is some form of accurate information. How do you know? You try it out. You try it out.
What do you mean by try it out?
Well, for instance, many people say, I want to know if the food I'm feeding is good for my animal. And I say, well, what does your animal do? Well, he'll eat anything. Well, that may not really be true. If you're feeding your animal one meal a day, they're going to eat anything because they're hungry. You know, but there are people that say their animals are picky eaters when in fact, it's that they cannot eat certain foods. Listen to that. Look at what you're being shown. Ask in your meditation, is my animal sensitive to something? And you may be surprised at what you see. So then you actually, when you're going to feed your animal, you would remove certain foods and try it. And you're going to see your animal come more to life and come open. And guess what? You got it right.
Now, you refer to Rumi here as your teammate or your partner, not your pet or,
That's right.
or your property.
No, he's not.
So when you use the term your animal or my animal, you don't mean it in the sense of ownership.
No, I mean it in the sense of a family member, your brother, your sister. That's how I look at it, that we work. I live with my animals as peers and teachers. And I believe we all can if we understand they know much more about us than we know about them. But we have to leave ourselves open to receiving that. And that's respect. That's respect. That is, in our integrous self, are we looking at this being as having the rights that we have, as much right to be here? And what can we learn from them? What are they showing us about ourselves? There are many animals that are reactive or demonstrating a behavior, and the human says, bad, bad. Well, we can't really be upset in our own lives and turn to our animals and say, I'm upset, you get over it. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. But we have to be willing to take responsibility for what's ours first. We have to do that.
You often refer to animals as teachers because, as you say, they know more about us than we know about them. They have certain instinctive ways of knowing that we can hardly begin to fathom.
Right. And when you look at who spends time with us 24/7, they're right next to us. I remember many, many years ago, there was a woman who came in with a beautiful white shepherd named Sika. And it was the first time that they came in for an appointment. And she sat down, and the dog sat down, and she had a list of questions that she handed me. And before we got going on the questions, the dog said, tell her she has to leave him. And I thought, we haven't even started yet. Don't say anything yet. And the dog said, tell her she has to leave him.
And you heard that like as verbal?
I heard it as though it was verbal. What the dog was showing me was that there was someone involved with this person, and it was a clash. And the dog was saying, not so much a danger, but there was tension about whoever this person was.
But you're picking this up intuitively, I guess, is the best way to put it.
But also with pictures. So it's like looking at a three-dimensional live action before you. So I turned to the woman and I thought, oh, this is it. I'm never going to see her again as a client. I just know. And I said, I know you weren't asking for this, and we haven't started on your questions, but your dog is saying, she knows you need to leave him. Does that even make sense to you? And the woman burst into tears. And I thought, oh, God, what have I done? We finished the rest of the session. 2 weeks later, I heard back from her. She wanted another appointment, but she said, what you do is phenomenal because I had no idea my dog knew so much about what was going on in my house. I have had my boyfriend living with us for a lot of years, and I have never felt comfortable. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I've never felt comfortable with him around. And I went home, and I said, you need to leave, and he left that night. And in the 2 weeks since I've seen you, we have a much better life. So, and that's trust, because I could have not shared what that, I don't edit, by the way, that's against what I do. But this was one of those lessons as to why you don't edit. You know, no, my job is just to communicate. I'm not responsible for what that is. And I say to my clients, if you don't want to know something, don't ask the question, because I'm not going to edit. And animals are very straightforward. They don't worry about manners and all of that. You ask a question, and that's why they're teachers.
Well, and also I gather that the animals are capable of entering into, maybe capable isn't the right word, it's natural for an animal to sometimes enter into a higher state of consciousness.
Absolutely. And many times there's information that they will bring to us. They may not have it themselves, but they themselves leave themselves open as a conduit for the person that they're working with. I know what I'm about to say is not a popular statement, but I have actually met monks in dogs' bodies. Amazing teachers that are very profound, that come to work with someone that only they can guide. And they take their work very seriously. So
are you talking about the philosophy of transmigration? Where in Hindu belief, a human might be incarnated as an animal in a future life or in a previous life. The Buddha talked about previous lives as animals. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we limit that. We somehow put ourselves that we're separate from. And we're not separate from. We're just an integral part of all that's going on as each species. What you seem to be saying, and I think this is crucial, is that if one were to be transmigrated into an animal form, that's not necessarily a punishment. Absolutely. It might be a reward. That's right. That's exactly right.
And I have met pairings of humans and animals who have been together before that have switched roles, and also have both been humans at the same time, or one an animal, one a human. It's very rewarding. And invariably when that animal is getting ready to transition, meaning to die, the human form starts to panic. And the animal reminds the human, we've done this many times before, and we always find each other. So you need to just keep breathing and know this is just a matter of ease.
So you have also been with animals as they go through this transition.
Yes. Sometimes that's 50% of my practice. Yeah.
Can you describe that a little?
You know, it's really lovely. It depends a lot on how the human is handling it. If the human is panicking, then the animal sometimes removes very quickly and hovers before they go into pure energy to see how their human is going to take it. If it has been a sudden situation where the animal's been hit by a car and the human is in trauma in the emergency vet, do we let him go? Do we help him? What do we do? Then we communicate and ask this being, what support would you like? And many times the animal says, this body is not working anymore and I need to leave. And sometimes the animals will say, will my human be okay? And I say, your animal wants to know, will you be okay? As long as I know he's safe, they'll say. And the animal will be safe and say, I'm fine, I just need to go. And the transition can be very easy. There are animals that transition almost after one breath of having the tranquilizer because they're really ready, not even the euthanol, but the tranquilizer. And there are other times that an animal will wait until the human leaves town to escape out the back door to go die naturally.
Oh. Now, there's some discussion in the field of spiritualism and psychical research about, the human afterlife, the different levels of a human afterlife. And many people wonder, people who have been with animals, is there an afterlife that animals experience?
I love that question because the work that I do is not about let's look at a past life so that you come out wearing Egyptian shoes when we're finished. That is not it. But I ask for the intersection where the animal and the human may still have lessons to learn. Many times it has to do with, did I euthanize in time? Did I wait too long? And that opens up into the field of, we've done this before. And in fact, your animal says, and is showing me, that he's been with you before. Sometimes in animal form, sometimes not. Many times an animal will say, I will be near her. And the human will say, well, does that mean you'll come back into physical body? Should I look for you? And it depends on if those two souls still have more to learn from each other that requires they both have physical form. That isn't always true. I've heard people say your animal will always come back to you. I haven't found that to be true because if each one is grown on, they have other beings to be with to learn whatever their next set of lessons are.
Well, this raises so many, many questions, but I would think for many viewers, what they're wondering is now we've talked about they quiet their mind, open themselves up, develop an ability to trust whatever may come through. What other instructions might there be?
Well, to practice with a friend. Because you can, especially if you have someone that you don't know their animal very well or they haven't spoken to you about their animal, you can just say, could we just sit together for a moment and either give me a picture or tell me what kind of cat you have, and then don't tell me any more. I'd like to see if there are any impressions I get. And it's practice, practice, practice. But here's the thing that's really important with all this, Jeffrey. You can't ask to be the container or receiver of more guidance and information if you're not working to clear your own stuff out. You have to be working on yourself in development and evolvement, or you don't have room. You won't hear it. You
yourself, I have to imagine, have had one-on-one communication sessions, I'm going to guess maybe with 1,000 different animals.
I would say that's accurate. Perhaps more.
I mean, I can relate to that because I've done probably about 1,000 interviews.
Yes, you have. And by the way, thank you for your work. Because what you're doing exposes the rest of us to things we wouldn't be exposed to, which shows it exists, which gives us permission to open up to possibility. So you're changing the planet, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Well, the advantage of interviewing a human is that I can share it.
Right.
But when you communicate with an animal, it's harder to share, I would imagine.
And
if you did it on video, it might not come through.
That's true. But at the same time, you have to be willing to take those chances and say it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who will know when they're hearing something that's real. They know. Many times I see tears. They know they're hearing the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all. My job is just to connect those two. Whatever their lessons are, they will. They'll get it. And I say to people, take what works, leave the rest behind. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I just am here to share.
One of the interesting things you've told me is that you do workshops for people with animals who want to communicate better with their animal. And typically what you discover is that these people it's not just about the animal communication, it's about the inner growth.
That's right. And I will tell you, it's so rewarding and so exciting because I'm watching them as they're going through these exercises. And their focus is, I need to work on my animal. In the meantime, we're working with them on themselves. And you can see them all of a sudden getting it, and they're like popcorn. And all of this color, and they're like fireworks. And they start opening up, and they get excited, and they realize, oh my God, I realize all this time I've been hearing other forms of communication. And it's like they have a hall pass to let it be okay. And now they also are sitting in a class of other people that are doing that. Now they have people they can talk about it with when they leave the classes.
Now, I love it that you use words like popcorn and fireworks, because normally if I were to interview a scholar, I wouldn't hear them talk that way, but you're describing an energetic phenomenon.
And it's so rewarding. And their eyes light up, and oh my gosh, they sit up straighter. And sometimes they cry, and sometimes they get choked up, and all their chakras line. It's just really beautiful. It's really beautiful. So, I mean, and I get paid to do this. How wonderful is this? I'm very blessed.
Well, it would seem as if the animals have a lot to teach us on many levels. One would be spiritual, that animals maybe they're not civilized in the way that we get civilized, so that we get disconnected from our own true nature.
Right. Even when we bring them into our homes, and even when we require that they never leave the house, they are still connected. And it shows up when you talk to people who are going through something heavy in their life, and then at the end of the sentence they'll say, "Thank God for my cat." And I'll say, "What does your cat do for you?" I had a man one time tell me his cat started to lay on his chest and just stayed there on his chest. And he said, I just don't know why my cat's on his chest. And I said to him, "By any chance, do you have heart problems?" And he said, "Should I go find out?" And I said, "Well, I would." And so he did. And sure enough, he had heart failure that is restrictive. And he had no idea. Cats are some of the best healers I've ever met. Now, here's something that I find absolutely fascinating about cats. We all know they purr. What's fascinating is they can adjust the frequency of their purr to the being that they're working with. So they literally will change the pulse or the tempo and the frequency of the purr to match the energetic of the person they're working with. What's also fascinating, and as science, we have actually created machines much like TENS units that have a vibration to heal bones of a cat purring. And I have met people on both sides of that where someone says, I had to wear this machine and it never worked. And then I've heard other people say, I don't know what this machine does, but it's amazing. The only problem is when the scientists were sampling the cat's purrs, they took a few cats, and then just did whatever the median was, not thinking that it had to be adjusted to the frequency of whatever the person was working with.
So the cat's a lot smarter than the machine.
It's innate.
Mm-hmm.
It's innate.
Mm-hmm. But often you also find that in let's say, a dysfunctional household,
right,
where there are animals, that influences the animal.
Definitely.
As well. They pick up on our hang-ups.
Mm-hmm. They do, and I also have met animals that are working specifically with children in abused families.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, sadly, the family is so dysfunctional when there's abuse that they will actually kill the animal or remove the animal because they get that the animal is very attached to the child. And there's a control issue there. But those animals are such a blessing because they're clear about being in service to that little being as long as possible. And that's why we have so many horses that are wonderful healers. And children, especially children with disabilities or special needs kids, will come and they relate to the animals right away. There's no interference between the animals communicating with the special needs kids and the special kids who are on the spectrum. Right ahead communication.
Well, it sounds as if what you're saying is that one way an adult human, perhaps like myself, who doesn't interact with animals much, can open up to that communication is to get in touch with my own inner child.
That's right. That's a great way of looking at it. Because if you give yourself the permission to just fall back and say, well, what if? What do I have to lose trying this? Nothing. I'm an adult. I can do this when no one's looking. And then see how it works, or take classes, workshops. Yeah.
Well, humans and animals have been living together and interacting together for thousands of years.
For thousands of years.
It's kind of symbiotic.
It is, and really our form of species of human thousands of years ago had to be more intuitive than we are now. To hunt, to survive, to feel if there was an animal that was going to take us out around the corner, we didn't go there. Unfortunately, with this, so much information that's coming in 24/7, we've gone from being right-brained, intuitive, to left-brained, everything has to be thought about. Now what's happening is more of us are more interested in finding out, wait a minute, what about the right side of the brain? Why is it that when I go to my friend's house, before I even open the door, I feel something's going on? Why is it that telepathy is now becoming much more aware of our ability to use telepathy? We're actually able to use telepathy all the time, and we have. Whether it's business people going for a deal and they're looking at the person they're with and they're trying to figure out, what's going on. They're not mentally thinking about it. They're assessing and climbing into that person to find out how the deal's going to work. Yeah. I think it's an exciting thing to be aware of and talk about.
So our time is up, but you're closing on a very high note, which what you just said is really an amazing thing, that we're all telepathic all the time and don't realize.
That's right.
How enlightening. Miranda Alcott, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for inviting us.
It's a pleasure. And thank you for being with us. Thank you.